Now before we can get this big giant beast of a stand for the big giant beast of a vivarium in its place, we've got to move some stuff because it's going right there. And that tank's got to come out of there because that tank is going to be going right there on that stand, but that stand has to go in place of that stand there. Originally I'd cut that stand down and we were going to put it on top, but I thought, nah, it just doesn't look as finished. I want to be able to, instead of hanging the lights from the ugly ceiling, I wanted to hang the lights inside the thing, so we'll be able to put the lights directly inside the unit. I have some nice pine paneling that's going to cover the first foot down inside, so the vivarium you're going to see from the vivarium up, and then all the lighting, everything will be concealed. And then this side here, that's going to be exposed on the first 4 feet, is going to be covered as well, because you don't want to see the side of the vivarium. They're really, really ugly. I'll put a picture up and you guys will see what it looks like with all the foam and the cork exposed. It's not very pretty. And that's going to be basically sitting right in that spot there. So you're going to be walking by it all the time going to the laundry room. Now, even bigger problem is Biggs is a hoarder. He has a problem. He's got stuff all over the place. We got snake hooks and LED lighting and cases of T5 bulbs and random stuff that has made an appearance here, and a bunch of weird bowls and jars and tanks and show tanks and whatnot. All that stuff has to find a place. Like you can see, we have about 2 inches of hydrogen. Above the hydrogen, we put the window screening, the nylon mesh window screening, and then above that, we put the landscape fabric. They were both cut to fit, 36 by 18 front to back, and then this back piece of cork here that touches right down low by the bottom, actually the hydrogen had to be moved out of the way. We had to cut around that a little bit to make it fit all tight. But basically the landscape fabric and the netting will create a nice barrier for the media to stop the media from going down below, and the hydrogen become kind of our false bottom that'll contain the moisture level for the vivarium to maintain humidity. Now we're ready to add our potting mix. Don't be jumping ahead, man. We don't even have the substrate ready yet. Now, I took the measurements of the vivarium. It's still out in the room there. I took the measurements, and it's 36 by 36 by 18. Now, we want to put the bed of the substrate probably about 4.5, 5 inches at the deepest point, maybe 6 inches at the back sort of thing. So I averaged it out at about 4.5 inches. So you take 36 times 18 times 4.5, you'll get a number. Take that number and divide it by 231. And that's going to give you a volume in gallons. I'm sure there's a calculator, I'm sure there's a method or something for translating it to liters, but for me, for my all intents and purposes, I need to know kind of gallons volume-wise. Now, I've got a tub here. It's dirty because they're just making up soil substrates for the isopods that are coming as well on the same flight. But we have a little bit left over, the isopod stuff that we will be able to use, but we've got all my components here on the ground and we're going to make up the substrate. Now that measurement came out to just shy of 13 gallons of substrate. So we're going to need a fair bit of substrate. It's 2/3 of this. So we're going to be able to go ahead and do that. Now, there's a lot of different types of medias. There's so many different options for medias out there, as I've shown you, and I only showed you probably a sampling of some of them that are available. A certain type of mix that retains moisture. It retains moisture well for the plants that we're going to need, because there's going to be a lot of moisture in there. But we also want it to be very, very good drainage. And that's very, very critical, because the moisture level is going to be fairly high in this environment. If the substrate does not drain, the moisture will be locked and contained within it, and you'll end up with root rot in most of your plants that are planted within that substrate. There's a very well-known mix that's out there that is used worldwide, and it's simply known by the acronym of ABG mix. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'm sure you do, because if you're watching a video about vivariums, you probably already know what ABG mix is, but basically it stands for Atlanta Botanical Gardens. That's where it was developed, And it's used everywhere for anybody that's doing anything for dendrobates, the little poison arrow dart frogs, and all sorts of vivariums just for plants and whatnot. It also has aspects of cultivation into house plants and all sorts of different types of things. It's a very, very stable media, and it's a very, very long-living media, meaning that you could use it for years and years and years, and it will not degrade. The ABG mix that everybody uses is 1 part peat moss, which is easy. That's Canadian peat moss, so that's easy to buy. You know, you can buy it pretty much anywhere. You don't want anything any added to it, but it's just a nice, loose, crumbly, brown peat moss. Easy to get, right? Okay, that's no problem. And then it's 2 parts of cocoa fiber. That's easy to do too. You can buy it in the brick form, like I've shown you guys, or you can buy it in the loose form as well. And it looks very similar to peat moss, but it's extremely stable and it lasts for a long, long, long time. 1 part charcoal, that's easy to get, okay? Now I went and you can buy horticultural charcoal anywhere. However, I have a big green egg, which is a type of barbecue that has no automation whatsoever, and it's a charcoal, old style, primitive type of barbecue. And you buy charcoal, hardwood charcoal in the nice big bags. And you always want the bigger lumps. The larger the lumps, the larger it lasts, the hotter you can get, the more versatility you have with your cooking. But when you break down the bags, you go right to the very bottom of the bags, you'll often find you have lots of loose little pieces. And that's exactly what this is. This is ordinary hardwood charcoal, and these are all the little, what I call them, the fines, or the scrapings and stuff, the stuff at the very bottoms of those bags, and that's exactly what it's good for, is these type of medias. So I use this stuff for culturing of springtails, which is one of the little invertebrates that we're going to be putting into these mixes for bioactivity. But a lot of these little type of pieces and this little powdery stuff is all perfect addition to your substrate, as we talked about in the video about substrates. And then the other things that's in this is 2 parts of orchid bark. Well, orchid bark or reptile bark, easy to get. You can buy it at pet stores, you can buy it at garden centers. And I've shown you guys, it just looks like little, it's usually fir bark. You know, it's just crumbly. It's pieces of wood. It has a nice airy mix to it and stuff like that. Doesn't break down too fast. All good. So we're at 1 part peat moss, 2 parts cocoa fiber, 1 part charcoal, 2 parts orchid bark. And here's where the crux comes in, being a Canadian. It calls for 2 parts of tree fern. Now, tree fern is not something that is readily available. It is a CITES protected thing. It is not a renewable source. It is an extremely wonderful media. It lasts borderline forever. It's the root system of a primitive tree called a tree fern. And this root system is harvested, and it's all these little tiny sticks and stuff like that. I'll put a picture up here so you guys know what it looks like. The problem being is in Canada, because it's a protected species, it's not from here, but it's a CITES protected species. Using any sort of form of that is usually very, very challenging to get into the country, unless you can prove that it's been done in a renewable source. And then also then the problem is then it becomes availability becomes an issue, and with availability becoming an issue, then price also becomes an issue. So tree fern is not going to be used in this mix. So we're going to kind of switch it up a little bit. Things that I like to add mixes a little bit different. I don't like to follow by the rules. You can't control a Biggs, you can't contain a Biggs. He's going to do it his own way. So we're going to be putting some long fiber sphagnum moss in there. Got lots of that. And that's nice and long lasting. It's airy. It's very, very moisture retentive. You know, we're going to throw a lot of leaf litter in that thing. We're going to break it down. So the end result is probably going to look fairly similar to what I use for my isopods. And this is a very loose, airy type of mixture. I'm going to put more charcoal and I'm going to put more orchid bark into this mix. But it's a very, very loose mix. And it's nice. It's got some richness to it. I think the plants will do great. So let's get mixing some of it up. Biggs isn't fancy. Biggs isn't going to do anything by parts. Biggs isn't going to use measuring cups or anything like that. Biggs is going to be dumping everything right here into his tub. And then he's going to get dirty and mix it all up, and then we'll see what it looks like. Now, if you're not as confident in your own abilities, and you should be, you should trust yourself. You should learn from everything. Spend some time with it. You'll find a mix that works best for you, depending on how heavy-handed you are with your watering, the density of your plants, the intensity of the light you have on your plants, and the plant's individual needs. But you'll find a mix that works well for you. I think this is going to work great. You can always change it. You can always add to it. Now to add our potting mix, our substrate, potting mix, whatever you want to call it, I'm just going to get a little bit in to get started. And then I'm going to work it around the corners so I don't see this edge, or as little as possible of that edge. So unplanned by me at the time, because I hemmed and hawed and went many different ways of whether or not we were going to put a waterfall and whether or not we were going to have a water feature with a true false bottom with kind of a shelf. This little piece of cork that's here is actually a round, and it has an opening here, and it goes to the base that's sealed off against the back wall, and it has an opening here right at the base, which uniquely will make a real nice hide for something like dart frogs or something down the road. And because there's nothing permanent on the bottom, I can take all this substrate out, I can take the screens and so forth out and the hydrogen, and we could put a water feature in here down the road to make it more adaptable for something like poison frogs. You think I'd almost had it planned, because this is exactly the right amount of substrate that I mixed. See, Biggs sometimes does have a plan. Or at least he makes it look like he has a plan. Look at that. Perfection. Just flatten this out. And honestly, I think we're good to go. Next step, the lighting and the humidification systems. We've got to hurry. Plants are here today. Thanks for watching. Take care.